for the professional initiative at the University of Pennsylvania, Carey Law, also the founder and executive director of the Access to Justice Tech Fellows Program, which is a fellowship that educates, trains, and equips law students at the intersection of law, technology, design, to improve legal delivery by placing them in organizations like your wonderful organization and others around the country to explore, I think, learn, and through experiential engagements of how to leverage technology to improve access to justice. So thank you for inviting me, and excited to join the panelists and have this discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're really excited for this conversation. Triana, do you want to go? I'm just going down my line of the Zoom screen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Triana Kalmanoff. I'm a user experience and service designer here at A2J Tech. And currently we're working on a number of things. We do document automation, a lot of which I don't work on personally, but we do websites, legal aid, websites as well. One of the biggest projects that we work on, or that I work on, is the Legal Kiosk Project. We have a couple of different initiatives across the country where we are putting kiosks in to help people get basically legal help, as well as doing a lot of content work. And really honored to be here with Miguel and Sateesh because they're both legends in the industry. I feel very excited to be on this panel. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Sateesh, last but not least.
Hello, I'm Sateesh Nori. I'm the executive director of justfix.org. We are a housing justice tech nonprofit. All of those things seem contradictory in one sentence, but what we do is we try to empower tenants through data and through easy to use technology. One of the things we do is help tenants file letters of complaints against their landlords in New York City, thereby allowing them to take steps before they get to court, in many cases where they can't ever get a lawyer unless they're facing eviction. The other thing we do is we make data in New York City more transparent. So we have a tool called Who Owns What. If you've ever lived in New York City or you live in New York City now, you can look up your current landlord by name or by address, and you can see everything that there is to know about them publicly in terms of their business. You can see whether they evict people, how they maintain their buildings, whether they're connected to other landlords, how big they are, and so on. So it's really a pleasure to be here. I look forward to our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to dive right into these questions because I am really excited about the things that we're going to tackle today. And I think they go to the heart of what we try to accomplish here at A2J Tech. So my first question is, what are some of the challenges that people face when trying to get legal help or understanding solutions to their legal problems? So I'm going to go in reverse order. Sateesh, if you'd like to start us off.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that one of our supporters, Rebecca Sandifer, who's a professor at Arizona State, writes about. And it's that most people, when they have problems, they don't categorize them as legal problems. They just think of them as problems. I don't have heat. Is that a legal problem? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. You know, I have bed bugs. Is that a legal problem? Is it my neighbor's fault? Is it my landlord's fault? And so not knowing whether you have a legal problem is a huge obstacle when most of the solutions exist inside the courthouse. And so if you never know how to get to the courthouse, or that you need to go there or to access a legal provider, how are you ever going to get those problems resolved? And so JustFix is one of those types of solutions that has this in mind, which is you don't need to know what type of problem you have, but here's a solution that doesn't involve going to court, spending hours and days and months of your life waiting for someone to guide you through a labyrinthine process that you may never get to the end of because you need a lot of patience, a lot of time, sometimes money, sometimes you have opportunity costs, you have to miss work, you have to pull your kids out of school. If you're elderly or disabled, you have to travel long distances to get to the courthouses. And so at this point, I don't even remember the question, but I think what you were getting at is, how do we address legal problems? How do we categorize legal problems? And I think one way is to just think as simply as possible, like put yourselves in the shoes of your grandmother or your grandfather or your older aunt and uncle, and think like, how would they solve this if they couldn't get a lawyer, if they were alone, if they were far away from resources? What would be the easiest way to get them on the path towards a solution that is empowering, that they can kind of work with on their own terms and on their own time? So that's my answer, is that we have to do a lot more work before we can just call something a legal problem. It's much easier for us to do that than for the average person.
Right, right. Triana, do you have any thoughts on other challenges that people face when trying to get legal help?
Yeah, thanks, Sateesh. That was very, very well-rounded response. I think, like Sateesh mentioned, a huge problem is people not really seeing their issues as a legal problem. And I think one of the reasons for that is most people are not lawyers, so they don't think of their own problem from the perspective of the law. Kind of like Sateesh mentioned, if I have a heating problem in my house, I think of that as a heating problem. And maybe I think of it as a rental problem. I probably don't think of it as a legal problem. And so trying to keep that mindset is really important for us as people that work on the solution side, because we can be really mindful about that from the time that we start building, when we're thinking about, how are we going to think about this? How are we going to communicate this? If we have the opportunity to say, okay, nobody's going to think about this as a legal problem, how do we want to communicate what our solution is? So basically being as specific as possible is really helpful, using terms that people would normally use to communicate to their friends and family members about their issue, like, rental or heating or fix, rather than big words like adjudicate and resolution. It can be really, really helpful, especially, with Google search, but even just, with people reading a page and wanting to understand what you're doing. So just second everything that Sateesh said, basically.
Yeah, thank you. I really love the idea of taking out some of the jargon that makes it so intimidating. Miguel, do you have any other thoughts on challenges that people face when trying to get legal help?
Just like actionability, right? You get a piece of paper in the mail that summons you to court because a creditor is trying to grab a debt, or your landlord's evicting you. Acting on that, right? Not just looking at that piece of mail and then throwing it in the pile, having the confidence to proactively resolve that, respond to it. I think there's a huge gap in resources available, or where to even go when this happens, what to do. And I think it's intimidating, especially if I have a full-time job. I don't have time to take off for work, or I'm barely making ends meet, to deal with this burden with the time and consideration and intentionality that it takes causes a huge strain. So just like the kind of, very human cause of dealing with legal problems, it's a challenge and a burden on many people. And I don't think we take that a lot into account in terms of the development of approaches that we try to help people resolve their legal problems. I think Sateesh, your team, and it does a really great job of trying to build around and meet user where they are. But wide scale, I think it's hard because a lot of what we're talking about is behavioral, right? And how do we help not only get people to get the information, but like be empowered to like address it, or solve it, or that.
Yes, thank you. Speaking of resources, so we're all here on Zoom today. We're all gathered from different corners of the United States right now. But so a lot of our solutions are rooted in technology, right? But how do we reconcile that with a lack of technological literacy, maybe in the groups or communities that need the most help in this area? Triana, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, this is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about as a technology company, especially when we know that low-income and vulnerable people are much less likely to have access to technology in their homes, to be a lot more uncomfortable using technology outside of their homes if they're unfamiliar with it. And so we really want to be intentional kind of across the board in everything that we do to make sure that things are not intimidating and as friendly as possible. And this goes both in terms of like the words that we use, as well as trying to think about non-technology aspects to the solution that we're building. So, technology is really, really powerful, but it can only take us so far. And so one of the projects I want to just illuminate is we're working on like legal kiosks that I mentioned. Those are essentially portals, access hubs that people can use a computer at, and they are located within communities. So rather than asking people to travel to the local courthouse or the local legal aid office, as they frequently have to do, I think Sateesh mentioned that people have to, find childcare, pay for transportation, which can be a huge, huge barrier. That's not a technology issue, but we can put technology closer to people. And so that's what we've done in the Legal Kiosk project. We've made sure that the technology is available closer and it's available for free and people can search and stuff. But aside from that, I mean, you'll hear me say this probably a million times, but content is king. If you have content that is not understandable, it doesn't matter how nice your technology is, how fast the speed that the page loads, it doesn't matter how nice it looks. If people don't understand what you're trying to communicate, technology is not going to be the solution for you.
Absolutely. Miguel, can you talk a little bit about how development should address this kind of thing?
Yeah. One thing I was really excited about in the last couple of months is found like the People's Law School in Canada. I thought it was profound, not in the highly technical nature of the tool. And this kind of gets to a key point in terms of maybe it's not the technology. I think technology is rapidly advancing, and of course, the law profession and the legal system will have to evolve, but it's how a user or individual interacts with a tool or solution. And so what the People's Law School in Canada does, and I'll put the link in the chat, is they present their problems. They present their problems in a very easy to understand format of how people experience their interactions. And for some reason, it's so hard for us right down the border to really present information in this way in a consumable format. If you're having a challenge with your phone, or if you like simple things that people often experience, and how from creating that awareness, we can take actionable steps to resolve them from where that person is, whether it's, a fifth grade education or, a college graduate that's dealing with a landlord-tenant issue. So it's meeting a variety of users where they are, whether you're in a rural community that has low internet broadband connectivity, or in a city where there's so many resources you don't know where to turn, trying to simplify the navigation process, I think is a huge challenge, but yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Sateesh, could you weigh in also on how your projects are weighing in on technological literacy?
Yeah, I mean, the digital divide is a huge issue, and we at Just Fix have gone to great lengths to design our products so that they're very usable, everything from the colors to the fonts to the spacing to how like drop-down menus work. Our products are available in English and Spanish at the moment, but we have the idea to expand that at some point. And we do a lot of user testing and make sure that people are able to use our products. We also try to co-design our products with partners in the community, organizers, other NGOs and nonprofits, so that like everyone, weighs in and says, this works, this doesn't work, this is too confusing, this is, is easier to use. But the other thing I would add is, in some ways, the only good thing that came out of the pandemic is that it accelerated the use of technology. And so many more people are now able to use devices. They're able to use Zoom. They have to log into Teams for certain courthouses. And so I think we're in a better place, and the digital divide is shrinking, and it's probably inevitable that it will go away. Like, just like everyone has TVs and microwaves, and they'll eventually probably have devices, they'll have smartphones. And the other thing, we do real quickly is we make sure that our tools are available on a device that's 5 years old, not like the latest iPhone. We don't make it an app so that you don't need a credit card to use JustFix. Even free apps require credit cards, and a lot of my friends and family are surprised about that. Like, why don't you make an app? Well, if you don't have a credit card, you can't get on the Apple Store or the Google Store. You can't get anything if you don't log in with a credit card. So ours works on a browser, and hopefully, and we tested across different types of browsers that people are likely to use, like Safari and Chrome and so on.
And really quickly, I may have probably misunderstood the question. It was, how does your organization deal with those things? And to be honest, I think directly we don't. We are empowered and empower other organizations. We place fellows in JustFix in 2018, and had the pleasure and opportunity to place fellows and A2J Tech, I think, for the last 5 years, and fellows that are working there now. So I think we place fellows in cultures that are very much in a position to develop technologies and solutions that are meeting users' needs, and in an ethical and kind of responsible way. And then there's organizations that we work with that haven't started on this path of innovation or thinking about technology or thinking about design. And we're able to use past projects as starting points, or help connect them with certain resources, and help through supplanting the fellows build an opportunity to build capacity. Some nonprofits that we work with, maybe 2 or 3 people. Others may be, 50 or 100, but they haven't really taken a step in a path of innovation. So just thinking about where that organization is on their journey, and also how that the fellow can be a representative, both a cultural representative to bring insight and new perspectives, but also, ask questions of why this is that through either the design process, or just their lived experience.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I also have Victoria.
Yeah.
I was inspired by all of those answers. Another thing that we do at A2J Tech is to really think about the way that a product or a project is rolled out. And so one of the things that we try and incorporate into all of our websites is some contact information, whether that's a phone number, an email. We try and do phone numbers almost every time. And that way, we don't hide it the way that some companies do when they're really, really big, to try and make sure people don't actually get to support. If somebody wants to call in and ask a question, they normally have a phone number to call. This was super important when we rolled out COVID-19 eviction forms, which is a free tool during the eviction moratorium that we developed to allow people to send letters to their landlords to basically say that they have the right to stay. We got calls every day from people that were unsure of how to fill out the form or just wanted to be heard. And having a number or an email like that is actually really helpful from a number of perspectives, but also as a really nice way to find out how your tool is being received. If people are having trouble with it, you'll know immediately. If there's a bug that you maybe didn't catch, you'll find that immediately as well. So in addition to user testing, like both of the other panelists described, it's also really helpful to have an avenue in like that if you're able to have that.
Absolutely. Right. There still needs to be that human touch, that human element. So my next question is something that we kind of mentioned before in our earlier answers. It's, what are some ways that your projects boost awareness of low cost or free legal resources? Because we've already discussed how that is a barrier or an intimidation factor in finding legal help. So Sateesh, let's start out with you. New York City, pretty expensive place.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, we rolled out a couple of tools that were specific to that time. One is called Eviction Free NY. And so through that, we helped right to counsel providers connect with tenants who maybe don't even know there is a right to counsel. When they rolled out right to counsel, there were limitations on zip codes and income, and people didn't know who qualified and who didn't. It was really complicated. So we helped build a website where people could find that information. Later, we built a website where people could fill out a hardship declaration during the pandemic to forestall a pending eviction case. And the only way the court facilitated that is to send it in or go to the court with a letter, which was really dangerous during COVID and difficult. So we automated that process, and we allowed people to fill out the letters on their phones and have them emailed directly to the court, and the court accepted those letters. So that helped thousands and thousands of people connect with like legal assistance or legal help. Going forward, we see ourselves as more of, as the right to counsel grows, New York City is a very unique place. And so eventually tenants will all have access to legal counsel if they're facing eviction. But one of the challenges is if you're not facing eviction, it's even harder to get a lawyer now than ever before, because all the lawyers are focused on those eviction cases. So in our area, which is like tenant repairs and conditions, we feel that we provide an alternative to all the legal resources that are available. And the last thing that we do is we have what's called a learning center. So it's just a series of articles that we post about like everyday questions people may have. How do I fight mold? How do I break my lease? What if I have no heat in my apartment? And one of the goals of the Learning Center is to increase our SEO, which is like our dirty secret, because people search for those things and we try to direct them back to Just Fix and then land on our main page. But it also serves as a way to give people resources about everyday rights that they may have as tenants in New York City.
Thank you so much. Miguel, any thoughts on low cost or free legal resources and how we can emphasize those?
I'm ultimately blessed to kind of have a little pan or insight in a ton of different projects. From this past summer to that resonate with me, out in Brooklyn, working with Brooklyn Legal Services on a project to help inform or build a suite of entrepreneurial legal tools for the LGBT community. And that was done in like just a very culturally responsive way that sought to empower LGBT entrepreneurs by the fellow who was working on the project, Isosa. Just really phenomenal that he kind of approached us to engage in the project and was able to get that going at Brooklyn Legal Services. And they have a long history of working on these issues. So I think that's a huge part as we integrate technology, thinking about that trust factor. I know, just reading on a lot of Just Fix, your collaborations with a lot of tenant organizations and communities, and like shifting it away from the technology, more about the empowerment, right? I think as we navigate our lives, whether you're a low income individual or someone of moderate means, we all interact with technology. We all have challenges of using new apps. But some of us can navigate through those. So thinking about these other things, right? The cultural responsiveness piece, the community empowerment piece, and the process of how we go about building the technology, right? Do we do these like kind of design sprints where we're like really extractive and exploitative, and then we still build in our own sets of features or priorities? Like how involved is the community and how kind of balance is the power when you're talking about that dynamic. Another project was a project that we worked in collaboration with DNA Legal Services. They provide legal help to the Navajo Nation out in Arizona. And they were on the end of the spectrum where they did not take a lot of, have a lot of history in building out technology tools. So we were, one of the fellows there were with a background in like information and instructional design, helped build out digital tools. So yeah, Keila Perez. I just want to shout out the fellows that are on the call today. I see Laura Steinbach, Shelly, and if I'm missing anybody, and all the supporters as well.
Yeah, thank you everybody again for coming. We're very excited. Triana, let's round us out. Effective ways to boost low-income resources or free legal resources.
Yeah, one of the points that Miguel just made that I really want to emphasize is how important it is to get the word out essentially in non-legal spaces. So in community organizations that already are serving people that, and this goes back to Sateesh's point from the very beginning, that maybe don't know that their issue is a legal issue. And so making sure that, places like food pantries or shelters or other community service organizations are aware of the free resources that are available, because the people on the ground, first of all, know what the need is the best and will be most able to communicate that to the people that would be able to use it. And the other thing that sounds really simple, but anytime that you can use the word free, if it actually is a free legal resource, just goes a super long way. People really associate legal help with it being very expensive and very hard to get. So we just like to try and emphasize that in as many places as we can. If we're offering a free service, to just say it's free and it's always free.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that free always gets my attention, so I completely agree.
One thing I do want to add, which is, not to play devil's advocate, but, being, just growing up poor and seeing things that were free, it wasn't appealing. And not to say that it wasn't accessible in a way that it was free, but more so like rethinking how we think about free, right? Because there is like communities that value things that cost a lot and that are expensive, and like have certain ways that they feel about things that are free, which is interesting in itself, and it's a whole other conversation. But it's just fascinating that like, oh, a service or something could be free and it still not be like, oh, I want this one because it's free. No, I want the expensive one.
That's a great point, Miguel. I'm curious if that's come up in your work at all. Like, have you been able to try out other ways of communicating, free resources, but maybe not emphasizing that they're free or emphasizing that they're accessible in a different way?
I would say personally, it's come up, like referring people to a buddy of mine was dealing with a debt collection issue in Seattle, and so all the automated forms in Seattle work very functionally, through their law help. And there was a tool that did cost money. I forget the name of the tool, but trying to offer this as a service and just really going through the explanation of why this is the same thing, if not better. But sometimes people want to pay for things because they may associate free with cheap or less. So how can we within our work build in the quality through that? So it's a challenge. Of course, I don't have the answer all the way, but the challenge is it's an interesting challenge that I don't think we've taken a lot of time to unpack in the nature of free services, which because everyone connotates a lawyer most people connotate lawyers with expensive, with, this thing is not. And so how can we both, as we're providing our services, as, spread that the quality is there as well. Are we over time or are we gone to 30?
I think we are
we are
pretty
at time.
good, and I would like to dive into this next question because I think it goes off of that point really well, and then we'll get into the QA. But my next question is, so the legal industry, and not meaning to bash, I do come from a legal background as well, it profits in a lot of ways from people's ignorance or discomfort with the law. And I'm wondering if you guys have experienced any kind of pushback from legal professionals, or perhaps experienced barriers to partnerships because people felt threatened in some kind of way from your work. Miguel, you work with a law school, so I'm very intrigued to hear your answer on this.
I mean, yes and no. I think that's with any, I think the individuals probably who are most threatened are solo small practice attorneys that work in the areas of family law. These are the individuals who are very vocal when you hear about regulatory reform efforts in different states of opposing, those initiatives. I think in the law school level, I'm really excited to see deans and folks in leadership stepping up to create curriculum, to create experiential opportunities around, technology, design. Every time I see a new law design course, I get really excited to see that students will be engaging in this work and do it in a meaningful way. And on the nonprofit side, I think it's tough because I would say the majority of nonprofits and social impact organizations want to step in, want to leverage technology to improve their service delivery, but it becomes an issue of capacity. And how can you build in an innovative culture within probably a traditional legal aid organization without stampeding an already very strapped capacity level that some of these nonprofits deal with. And then it's taking leadership over building in an innovative culture. So you may have this cool, team working on a TIG project in one part of the organization where, the ED or the leadership may not cares too much and places a lot of value just on their direct services teams and units. So how can you build a culture of innovation within organizations that, where all of the lawyers who are working on these understand? And yeah.
Yeah, Sateesh, what are your thoughts?
Well, we try to supplement and increase capacity for other groups within the space. So our search tool saves people, hours of time searching individual records because we scrape the data and put it all in one place. Our letter building tool for complaints actually could set up organizers by bringing them people who are already empowered in some way. They've already taken some action. They understand their rights a little bit more. And so we really believe we're part of the ecosystem. And so there isn't any for-profit player in our space. There's no money in it to help tenants get repairs, right? Since housing is a commodity, the money is to be made by exploiting tenants. And so some of our, critics are landlords who are like, hey, why are you making my business public? Well, do you not own that building? Yeah, click, they hang up. Or, other search tools that are similar to ours, like Street Easy or Property Shark, they cost hundreds of dollars a month to use. And professional brokers and real estate speculators pay that money. But for the average person, you're not going to pay $495 a month for a license just to search whether your landlord is good or bad, right? So we really think we're in this space pretty much alone. There isn't anyone really like us. And hopefully we can supplement the work of the really overworked, overburdened, poorly resourced legal services communities, organizing groups, and so on.
Yeah, really interesting the point, because I think in addition to the services that Just Fix provides, it's also that power dynamic of challenging, bad actors. In some cases, not all landlords are bad actors, but really shifting that power balance. And I think that's where technology and the law has the most power. You see groups like, I want to say the Benefits Tech Advocacy tool does a really great job at trying to shift the power dynamics in that relationship as it pertains to folks who are appealing for their benefits or using a technology tool for government benefits. So if there is that long-term kind of systemic advocacy component built in, I think that's where technology becomes really powerful and really impactful on communities.
Mhm. Triana, any thoughts on pushback from the legal community or how that collaboration with the legal community has gone?
Yeah, all of my experience with pushback has come not from an individual level, but from sort of a bureaucracy or agency level, specifically around, I think most of my experience has been around courts, both working on projects, here at A2J Tech, as well as from before. There's a lot of fear about making any kind of change, upsetting the system. And so I think even really good intentioned people and programs can be really hesitant to make any kind of change. I'm thinking of a project that we worked on where even just semantically, people were really concerned about removing certain words that were hard to understand for people because they've always used that word. And so really trying to, it's a hard problem because it's systemic, but how to make that, go through, I think it really helps to have someone on the inside who's an advocate of understanding why it's important to change the word or the project. And I think like Miguel mentioned, it's hard to advocate for change when it's going to increase workload for everybody. It's hard to say, well, people are going to have an easier time now in court, you might get more cases. And that's, the system, as you mentioned, Victoria, is not designed to accept everyone. And that's, that would break. But I think it's also really important to link that change to basically upstream impact. So if it's easier for people to understand their own legal issue, it maybe is also easier for people to understand and fix their legal issue before they even get to court. And so I think it's really important to emphasize that to the people that are making decisions. It's not just going to be easier to, address your case in court. It's also going to potentially reduce the number of people that show up and empower people to solve their own problems.
Really, really, really powerful, I think, really super powerful. If you focus all of the energy on, how can we improve these court things and not on the upstream of preventing people from even getting there, you're just doubling down. So really, really powerful.
So we're gonna do a brief little blip into the QA and then we'll come back to any questions if we have any left. But I got a QA question. I think people were really fascinated about the idea of the stigma around free or quote unquote free products. And one person said, I'm curious to hear if Sateesh has experienced the stigma of free with his tools at Just Fix. I don't know, Sateesh, if you could speak on that.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with when I was a legal aid lawyer, I would hear sometimes people say, I don't want a legal aid, I want a lawyer. And we had to explain like, no, we're not like nurses' aides who are not, the same type of medical professional that a nurse might be. They're different. We are actually lawyers. It's just what's called legal aid. And that kind of describes the stigma that people feel like, oh, I'm relegated to this overworked public servant because I don't have any money. And the landlord or the debt collector or the bank, they have these high-priced lawyers, and that's not fair. So that stigma exists. But one of the ways that we at Just Fix try to challenge that is, what's really valuable to many of our users and many low-income people in this space is their time. It's not money. They don't have money. Like that's not going to change anytime soon. But their time is what is taxed the most by free providers, right? Like when I worked at legal aid, people would have to wait for 3 to 4 hours just to be seen. and they have an emergency. They're facing eviction, or their food stamps got cut off, or they're in foreclosure, or their children are going to be taken away by child services. And they're forced to wait for hours and hours in these terrible waiting rooms with fluorescent lighting. There's no water, the bathrooms are bad, there's no food nearby. They have to get through security to even get in the building. It's very dehumanizing. And we tax people at the point of their most precious resource, which is their time. And so tools like Just Fix are meant to save time. Like, you can do it on the bus or in your home, on your couch. You can start a complaint. You can learn your rights, like wherever you are, however you want to access it, like it's there for you, and do it however you want to. We're even exploring ways to like make a game where kids can learn about their housing rights by like playing an interactive game. Like, we want to access people where they are. And so the stigma of free is a real one, but we have to recognize, I think, what's really the most precious for many of our clients, and that's their time. Like, if we don't recognize that, we'll punish people over and over in these really dehumanizing ways by making them wait, by not getting back to them, by putting them through all of these, tests for eligibility and qualification for our services and so on.
Absolutely. Miguel, it looks like you have some other thoughts that you'd like to share about the stigma.
Oh, no, I think, and I think lawyers don't have, to be honest, some lawyers don't have, it's a public defender. There's all types of stigmas within the profession that pervades, and even without. Popular culture as well kind of paints these narratives and cliches. It's unfortunate, but it's the sad reality of the truth. So I don't think this should come as a surprise, but it should be informed with and how we approach our work. And if that has been a approach that Sateesh has utilized and to be successful, that probably will be powerful for a bunch of others to hear as well, who are not on the call, to think about approaches in terms of community engagement and effective advocacy around the adoption or use of technology.
Triana, any concluding thoughts on the stigma free?
No, I'm just really happy to have had that conversation. I think it's really valuable to consider time, especially because there isn't really a word like free we can use to say. I mean, we can say quick, fast, easy, but I think that's just a really important thing to be aware of. So thanks for bringing that up, Sateesh.
Absolutely. All right, I'm trying to find this QA that I just saw, but I did see somebody wanted to know how best to partner with you guys. So I'm going to pull a reverse. Triana, where can we find you and how can we partner with you? And then we're going to work our way around.
Yeah, you can find us at A2JTech.com. We have a contact button. I can also put my email in the chat, but we'd love to hear from folks and always happy to partner with everyone.
Yeah, you can find us on law.upenn.A2J Tech Fellows. So our main website is under redevelopment. Should be up shortly, but email, I'll put it in the chat. I'm happy to connect, support, or just listen if anyone wants to brainstorm. And yeah, thanks for inviting me. And it was great to have an open conversation with you all.
Thank you for being here. Sateesh, how can we find you and how can we partner with you?
Yeah, we're at justfix.org, and my email is sateesh@justfix.org. We work primarily only in New York City. We have a small project in LA during the pandemic that's still going on. But for now, we're only in New York City. We're going to be focusing on New York City for a little while. There's a lot to do here, and we've only scratched the surface. But ultimately, I think, we're always willing to share what we do. It's all on GitHub. It's open source. It's, a lot of people have asked us about how we built our landlord search tool, how we built our letter of complaint, how we raised money, how we started, and so on. So there's a lot that we can share. We're always happy to share it. Feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you so much. One remaining QA is about whether or not this training is recorded. It is. We are going to be posting it on YouTube afterwards. But before we all go, in these last 10 minutes, this is always my favorite part of the events. I'm going to ask all of you to do a quick plug of your projects and one key takeaway you want everybody leaving this training to take home with them, basically. So Sateesh, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, a quick plug is we want to focus on public housing tenants, and these are issues faced by a lot of people all across the country as public housing is facing defunding or privatization or whatever you have it. And, we don't necessarily know if that's the right way to go, but I think we need to invest in housing. We need to have more access to housing. We need to make sure quality housing is part of the human right to housing, not just eviction prevention and building new housing, but quality housing. So I want everyone to take away from this that that's an issue hopefully you can advocate for, or at least spot it when you see or talk to people who may also be facing these issues. And there's nothing really to plug on my end except that we're still going to be working as hard as we can, and maybe one day you'll see us in your city and we can work together.
Miguel, quick plug and quick takeaway.
Quick plug, yes. Shortly, we'll be launching our 2023 fellowship program. So be on the lookout for that. One takeaway was that this is all a network. I think, we actively work together, have worked with Just Fix in the past, but I think it takes a kind of a synergistic kind of support network to make the work happen. So how can we build blocks just like we're doing with this conversation, but continue to build the blocks to inform others. I think, there's no monopoly over who gets it right. I think the people that stay getting it wrong, there's a lot to learn, right? It's just how we want to learn from that. I want to be honest in our failures for success. I've failed so many times that I have some stories to tell. But just being realistic in that, I definitely, if we had a ton of time, I would love to unpack, just Satesh's approach and reason for not scaling as opposed to some of his other counterparts, which may have chose to build out a model and rapidly scale, and just the challenges and benefits and the thought process. That's an interesting conversation in itself. But yeah, happy to partner and talk, and so proud of the fellows who are on the call and really the growth and success of A2J Tech. Remember when Jason and the team started it, and just it continues to grow and be and support so many organizations. So yeah, congratulations.
All right, Triana, quick plug.
My plug will be for Victoria and the event team. I know they're organizing some really great events, so I hope everyone continues to come out. I think that these conversations are so valuable, particularly between organizations. My takeaway is just to note that, amongst all of us that work in technology and legal tech, this whole conversation has not really been about the actual technology. It has been about people and connecting and communication. And I think that will continue to be the case for a long time. And so it's really important to have conversations like this. And so just want to thank everyone for being here and making that happen.
Absolutely. Cannot be stated enough. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much for everyone who turned out today. Like I said, the recording of this will be on YouTube afterwards. And then for upcoming A2J Tech events, you will find the announcements on our social medias, as well as an email following up to this event. Everyone will get the links that people helpfully put in the chat. So thank you so much today, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks so much.